Imagine waking up one day with the unsettling realization that you've done everything you were told would make you whole, and yet something inside you feels eerily hollow. You've learned to say no. You've learned to set boundaries. You've learned to put yourself first. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You no longer chase people who don't choose you. You remind yourself daily that you are enough. And still, there is a quiet tension humming beneath your chest. A low-grade anxiety that never fully leaves, a subtle sense of isolation that grows sharper the more you focus on yourself. This is the paradox no one warned you about. Self-love was supposed to heal you, so why does it sometimes feel like it's sealing you off from the world? Look around. Everywhere you turn, the same message echoes back at you. Choose yourself, protect your energy, cut off anyone who doesn't align with you. It sounds empowering. It feels clean. It feels safe. But what if safety isn't the same as wholeness? What if, in trying so desperately to love yourself, you've slowly begun to fear everyone else? There is a version of self-love that doesn't look like confidence or peace. It disguises itself as strength, but quietly feeds on avoidance. It tells you that discomfort is toxic, that struggle is a sign you're doing something wrong, that if something hurts, it must be eliminated. And so, piece by piece, you begin to curate your life not around meaning, but around emotional comfort. You stop engaging in conversations that challenge you. You stop staying when things get difficult. You stop risking rejection, failure, or misunderstanding. You call it self-respect, but deep down, something feels off. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you were truly changed by another human being? Not validated, not affirmed, changed. When was the last time you allowed someone to see the parts of you that aren't healed, aren't polished, aren't empowered? Or have you learned to love yourself so carefully that no one can really reach you anymore? Here's the uncomfortable truth hiding in plain sight. Not all forms of self-love are liberating. Some are defensive, some are reactive, some are built not on self-understanding, but on fear. Fear of being used, fear of being disappointed, fear of being seen too clearly. So you turn inward. You make yourself the center. You become both the giver and the receiver of your emotional world. And at first it feels like relief. But slowly, subtly, the world starts to shrink. You notice it in the way relationships feel more transactional than alive, in how intimacy feels threatening rather than nourishing, in how independence starts to resemble loneliness. You tell yourself you're just protecting your peace, but peace that cannot coexist with tension, vulnerability, or other people, is it peace or is it avoidance dressed as wisdom? This is the question no one wants to ask, because questioning self-love feels almost forbidden. It's treated as a moral good, an unquestionable virtue. To doubt it feels like betrayal of progress, of healing, of yourself. And yet, what if the version of self-love you were taught is incomplete? What if it prioritizes comfort over growth, control over connection, safety over truth? What if instead of teaching you how to live more fully, it quietly trains you to retreat? There is a shadow side to every ideal, especially the ones that promise freedom, especially the ones that promise freedom. And the more you cling to a simplified idea of loving yourself, the harder it becomes to see how it may be shaping you, closing you off, hardening you, convincing you that you are self-sufficient when human beings were never meant to be. The most dangerous traps are the ones that feel like protection. And somewhere beneath all the affirmations, boundaries, and self-care rituals, a deeper question waits, unanswered, unresolved, pressing against your awareness. Are you loving yourself, or are you hiding from life? That question doesn't demand an immediate answer, but once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Because to understand the dark side of self-love, you first have to confront why it became so necessary in the first place, and what it's really protecting you from. The rise of self-love did not happen in a vacuum. It emerged as a response to something deeply broken, something that had been neglected, suppressed, and misunderstood for generations. To understand its shadow, you have to trace its origin. Human beings did not suddenly decide to love themselves more. They learned to do so because for a long time they were taught the opposite. Many grew up in environments where worth was conditional, earned through achievement, obedience, usefulness, or emotional silence. Love was something you performed for, not something you inhabited. When that kind of world collapses, the psyche compensates. This is where psychology offers its first unsettling clue. According to Carl Jung, whenever something is rejected by the conscious mind, it does not disappear. It moves into the shadow. And the shadow does not remain passive. It waits, grows, and eventually demands expression. For decades, self-neglect was normalized, self-sacrifice was praised, emotional repression was mistaken for maturity. The shadow that formed was not selfishness, but unmet need. So, when the cultural pendulum swung, it didn't stop at balance, it overshot. Self-love became not just a corrective, but an identity. And like all identities formed in reaction to pain, it carried unexamined excess. Here is the hidden problem. Much of modern self-love is not rooted in self-knowledge, it is rooted in self-protection. Protection from what? From the chaos of other people, from rejection, from dependence, from the unbearable vulnerability of needing something outside yourself. This is where philosophy deepens the wound. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that when humans lose faith in external sources of meaning, tradition, religion, shared values, they do not become free overnight. First, they turn inward, but without depth, this inward turn becomes narcissistic, not transcendent. You begin to orbit yourself because nothing else feels stable. Self-love in this sense becomes a replacement for meaning rather than a path toward it. And the modern world encourages this substitution. In a culture driven by performance, speed, and constant comparison, turning inward feels like rebellion. But it's a very specific kind of inwardness, one that avoids discomfort rather than confronts it, one that curates the self instead of confronting its contradictions. You are taught to accept yourself, but rarely to interrogate yourself. This is where Arthur Schopenhauer becomes disturbingly relevant. He believed that much of human suffering comes from desire, specifically the desire to escape pain without understanding it. When self-love becomes a strategy to eliminate discomfort instead of a practice to endure and transform it, it quietly aligns with this impulse. You don't ask why something hurts, you ask how to make it stop. And that question changes everything, because pain is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is information. But the modern psychological narrative often frames pain as pathology. Discomfort becomes toxicity. Struggle becomes a failure of boundaries. And slowly you internalize a dangerous equation. If something costs me emotionally, it must be wrong. This is not wisdom. This is emotional consumerism. You keep what feels good. You discard what feels difficult. You optimize your inner world the way algorithms optimize content, toward comfort, not truth. Existential philosophy saw this coming. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that human beings are condemned to freedom, not liberated by it. Freedom demands responsibility, choice, and confrontation with uncertainty. But self-love, when misunderstood, offers an escape from that burden. Instead of asking, what kind of person must I become, you ask, how can I feel better right now? Instead of facing existential anxiety, you soothe it. Instead of engaging with the tension between self and world, you retreat into the self and call it empowerment. Even culture reinforces this retreat. Aldous Huxley warned of societies that don't control people through force, but through pleasure. When comfort becomes the highest value, people willingly surrender depth. They don't need to be oppressed, they distract themselves. Self-love, stripped of rigor, becomes part of this anesthetic. Affirmations replace reflection. Boundaries replace dialogue. Detachment replaces courage. And still, something remains unresolved. Because deep down, you sense it. A self that never risks connection never discovers its true shape. This is where meaning re-enters the conversation. Viktor Frankl observed that humans can endure almost any suffering if they find meaning in it. But meaning is not found by avoiding pain, it is found by engaging it consciously. The tragedy of shallow self-love is that it promises relief but delivers emptiness. It soothes the symptoms while leaving the cause untouched. And so the tension grows. You feel protected but not alive, independent but not connected, peaceful but strangely numb. You haven't failed at self-love, you've simply been practicing a version that was never meant to carry the weight of a human life. And this is only the beginning, because once this mindset takes root, it doesn't just affect how you feel, it reshapes how you see others, how you form relationships, and how entire societies quietly drift apart without ever realizing why. At first, nothing seems wrong. Life continues, you function, you adapt, you even improve on the surface. You're calmer now, more controlled, less reactive. You don't get pulled into drama the way you used to. You've learned how to disengage. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something begins to change, not in your circumstances, but in your orientation toward the world. You start to observe rather than participate. You manage relationships instead of inhabiting them. You analyze emotions rather than surrendering to them. This is the first unseen consequence, distance disguised as maturity. Psychologically, this shift is subtle but profound.